We're finishing up the Sikha that we started in Lakuti Sichot of the Rebbe Chelik Aleph, the first portion. And we are on Parshas Mishpatim, and we are talking about damages and how that relates to us in a spiritual way. So we're saying that every Jew has a something that God has entrusted him with. And it could be that we lie about it. We misuse it and we lie about it. And what is this thing that God has entrusted us with? The soul. And it could be that our soul, it really doesn't belong to us, it belongs to God. But God lends it to us, so to speak, and we are supposed to use it properly. But if we lose it and when we lie and we make all sorts of excuses, so then it says that it's not a good thing. That's what this Torah portion is talking about. And so it lists over there in the Torah several items that could be lost. And it says one of them is a sheep. And the Rebbe said this also refers to reasons for getting lost, that the Jewish people can be like a sheep. And that's possibly the worst of all. The worst reason of all. Why? Because what's wrong with a sheep? A sheep, if your big enemy is the sheep within you, then what's the problem with a sheep? That he has no defiance. He has no power to assert himself, no assertiveness. So sometimes the Jewish people are like a sheep, that they're afraid to stress their identity, or they don't even, maybe because they don't even know their identity. So as a result, when they're in a place, they try to act like everybody else, and they try to talk like everybody else. They try to ingratiate themselves to everyone that's around them. And then, even worse, they try to copy everybody else. Says the Rebbe that this is the cause why Jewish people can be like a lost sheep, like a wandering, confused, lost sheep, banned among the nations, wandering around with no goal whatsoever. And even worse, sometimes they can be the worst. I mean, we have, the classic examples of Jews that ruined the world. Like you have Marx and you have Freud, etc. Not to go into negative things. This is not the purpose of this class. Let me just step this here. There, straighten it up. All right, good. And that's why the Shulchan Aruch begins with the law. In the Torah, it's written, and in the big Shulchan Aruch, it's written in the Taz, and the Ramah starts off a basic principle, a basic attitude before you start Judaism has to be that you're not ashamed of what people say about you if you know you're doing the right thing. Don't be ashamed. It says, Al tipayesh, do not, al yavush, do not be ashamed. Don't be ashamed because of the people that scoff at you and that laugh at you. Very, very basic. Because who is it that scoffs at you all the time? Who are the people that scoff at you? You yourself. You yourself. You imagine in your mind that if I wear a kippah outside, I'm going to, I'll tell you a small story to tell you the degree, the degree this affects a Jew, I can testify on myself that I've really experienced this. I was not religious until I was about 25 years old, totally nothing whatsoever. And I knew there was such a thing as Judaism, but I didn't really figure out what it was. And it was a long process until I figured out that something over here is wrong. Something over here is wrong with the world. And I started thinking maybe Judaism might be the answer. It was a long and exactly what order of things happened, I don't really remember. But I remember one stage, and that was I decided that I was going to start putting on a kippah, at least put it on once, a kippah, yarmulke. I was not doing any commandments. I was not keeping Shabbos or putting on tefillin or had a mezuzah on my door. Absolutely nothing. I was living in this college town in Ann Arbor. But I decided that the world was pretty messed up, and that I decided that God existed, and that the only way I had any idea of how to relate to God was you put a kippah on. That was my bar mitzvah kippah. So I decided that's what I'm going to put on a kippah. So I put it on in my house where I could lock the door and no one would come in and see the kippah. And finally I decided enough of this, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to put a kippah on. This is in 1971 or something like that, early 71. So I remember I waited up until like 3 a.m. and I lived, it's a college town, but still there was this sort of semi-main intersection. And I went out and stood in the middle of the intersection. There was nobody there. There were no cars whatsoever. Just the only thing that was changing was the light. And I went there and I had a kippah in my pocket. And I stood in the middle of the intersection, looked over here, sure that nobody was around. I took this kippah out. It's like a white kippah from somebody's bar mitzvah. I put it on my head, took my hand up, stood around, looked around, maybe a minute, took it off and ran back home. Right, to show you the degree that I was obsessed with what people would think. And then finally it got to the point I just said, okay, I'll just put it on little by little. And nobody thought, nobody said anything. Nobody looked at me. Nobody even cared. In those days, everything was as weird as it is now, So nobody cared about what anybody else did. You could walk around naked, maybe the police would stop you, but nobody would particularly. Okay, so that shows that we Jewish people, unfortunately, are so obsessed with what the world thinks about us. And the last class we talked about that in the United Nations and etc. Okay. So that was paragraph number 7. Now we're on paragraph number 8, and it says over there, Behemshech HaPasuk Ches. We're now on 8, paragraph Chet. It's on page 139 in my book. Behemshech HaPasuk, and the continuation of this sentence that talks about if something is lost or stolen, and the person who steals it denies it, and we're referring that now to the thing that's stolen is the soul. Be'emshech HaPasuk Ne'amar, it says, the Pesach Din, that the decision is like this. Ha'etza le'peshia shebepikadon katotza mishor chamor salma, and even said, the result of this losing or misplacing or denying the loss of a entrusted object, whether that object is a ox, a donkey, a garment, or even we said the worst was a sheep. How do you fix this up? Good, we know the problem. What's the solution? Ado Elohim, it says, until the judges, the Dayanim, the judges, Yavod Davar Shenem, they Shavot come. Davar HaMusav Ala Dayan Arishon. This is talking about who was the judge, the first judge there was in the history of Judaism, Moshe. And the Espetush, the Moshe, they're called Dor V'Dor. And the representative of Moses in every generation. The Jewish people can't be without Moses. The Jewish people have to have a Moshe in every generation. We see from the Bible that Moshe was not just a leader of the Jewish people. He was the leader of the Jewish people. Without Moshe, he was like, everyone was like blind. It says in the Torah, Ketzon b'li roeh. Yeshua says to Moshe, you have to pick a new leader. Right? If you're not going to be leading the Jewish people, then you have to pick somebody that's going to take your place. Because if you don't, it says the Jewish people will be like a flock of sheep without a shepherd. Now, have you ever seen such a thing as a flock of sheep without a shepherd? There is no such thing. There is no such thing in the world as a flock of sheep without a shepherd, unless you get there a couple minutes or maybe something an hour before after the shepherd leaves. But as soon as the shepherd leaves the sheep, then the sheep automatically do whatever they want to. Right? They have no sense of unity. They don't go in packs like dogs or horses, something like that. Herds. Sheep just wander around. They see a nice flower, they eat the flower. This one sees this, he goes over there. This one falls off a cliff. This one gets run over by a truck. Right? Sheep, there's no such thing as wild sheep. Right? In mountains, maybe there's wild goats or something like that. Right? Watch out, it's a wild sheep. There's no such thing. Right? Sheep just get killed. That's all there is to it. They get eaten by wolves, they get eaten by dogs, whatever they. So it says, if the Jewish people don't have one leader that leads them, they could have all the leaders of their little groups. If there's not one Jew that cares about all of the Jews, then there's no more Jews. There's no more Jews. And we see that's exactly what Moshe was. Even though the people tried to leave and they rebelled against him and people wanted to go back, and he had trouble right and left, and there were always people that tried to break up the Jewish people, and then Moshe was always holding everybody together, or at least fighting for a cause that would hold everybody together. So it says every generation there has to be a representative of Moshe in his generation, one Jew that actively, not just passively sits and he cries about the Jews, but that actively cares, which is also a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but there has to be one Jew that actually does something about it. And we believe that that's the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I don't think that there's anybody else, any competition. I don't think there's anybody else that really is occupied in strengthening all of the Jews, bringing all of the Jews to Torah v'mitzvahs. There's certainly people that worry about all the Jews. They would love it if all the Jews left the Torah v'mitzvahs. They would love it. I'm talking about a Jew that really strengthens Torah and mitzvah, strengthens every Jew's connection to God. It says, you have problems, you lost your soul, you're confused, you're a lost sheep, go to Moshe. Go to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Shehu anotein koach la'asiyat tshuva. He's the one that gives power to do tshuva in a fitting way. And of course, you can ask the question, once again, the Lubavitcher Rebbe is not with us anymore. So the answer to that is that it's not so. The Lubavitcher Rebbe is equally with us, just as he always was. And there's people, some people go to his grave, the Oel, and some people go read Igrot Kodesh, the holy letters of the Rebbe. Some people do both. That's what I do. However it is, the Rebbe still gives direction, and the Rebbe, and you can just read the Sichot, the Maimurim of the Rebbe. His directions are so clear, and there's so many. And there's so many Maimurim and Sichot and speeches and letters, and it's always on the same exact principles. Like the Rebbe never changes his direction, never from the first day that he was Rebbe until right now, never changes his direction. The whole purpose of the Jewish people is to bring the Mashiach, and Mashiach will be the person that fixes up all the Jewish people. And that's exactly what the Rebbe is doing. Just simply putting the Mashiach, the only one that has laws about Mashiach, the only person is the Rambam. He's got clear laws about what Mashiach is. He knew everything that was written before him. He's the only one with clear laws about Mashiach. Since him, there's no one that has disagreed with him. No one of his stature. Of course, there's been sorts of how do you say, charlatans and pretenders and that have tried to. But the Rambam is the only one that is clear of what the Mashiach is supposed to be. And one of the things that disqualifies Mashiach is if he gets killed, but not if he dies. Clear. It's very clear. There's absolutely no one of any stature or that's any normal that says any differently. I mean, that's simply fact. So, except for that, all the qualifications of what Mashiach is supposed to do are present in the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He knows all the Torah, he knows all the written Torah, the hidden Torah, the secrets of the Torah. He tries to bring every single Jew to do Torah, mitzvahs, etc. And you can see that his effect is growing and growing and growing. There's more and more Chabad houses, it's more and more increasing. So that's what it means, go to the Moshe of the generation. Read a mimer of the Rebbe, read a sikh of the Rebbe, write a letter to the Rebbe, put it in the Giras Kodesh, go to the Oel, to the place where the Rebbe is buried, whatever you want. Yishalem Shnaim L'Reyo, and then he has to pay back double. Who is his friend? To his friend. Who is his friend? God. You have to give him double. What does it mean? The Kiflayim Mikafi Livneachet. You have to serve God twice as much as you did before you lost it. Like it says in Igeros HaTshuva, like it says in the Tanya, third book of the Tanya, how you regularly cross Daf Echad. If you used to read one page of Torah, then read two. You didn't read any, then start reading one, and then double it. As then Yiten lo HaKodesh Baruch Hu, God will give you mita keneged mita. He will give you measure for measure. Shazadonot, that the purposeful sins that you did, Yavchu lezichiot, will actually turn to be merits. How can they be merits? Kama nefesh bahamit, even the animal soul will help to serve God. How can they be merits? A person does purposeful sin. He does a purposeful sin. He did a bad thing. He went against the Torah. He misused people. He misused his soul. He misused time, money. He did things he wasn't supposed to do. And he realizes that he did bad things. Now he feels really bad. Feels really terrible. He realizes that he's guilty. What should he do? So a lot of people, what they do when they feel guilty is they go to, to idolatry. They go to idolatry. There's all these religions that promise complete salvation in the world to come and everything like that. So people get all confused. Says the Rebbe, don't get confused. You're a Jew. You have to act like a Jew. You have to think like a Jew. You have to go to your local Chabad house, go to your local Orthodox rabbi, and ask him what to do. Ask him what you're supposed to do, right? Whatever he says to do. Then read something about the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Read something, write a letter to the Lubavitcher, and whatever that rabbi tells you to do, the Chabad rabbi, your goal should be eventually to do twice as much. He tells you should put a mezuzah on your door, your front door, put a mezuzah on every door. He says you should put on tefillin at least once a month. Put it on twice a month. Then after that, 4 times a month. Then after that, once a week. Twice a week. Eventually every day. Right? Your goal is to double. Which is, no. Now what happens is, an interesting thing. It ends up that the reason that you're interested in doubling what you did is 2 things. Number 1, you realize I cannot trust myself. I can't trust myself. My own self that I love so much, that tells me what to do, every urge, follow every urge, just do it. All of a sudden I realize it's a mistake. I can't trust myself. Ooh, that's a very, very, very heavy thing, right? If only, Hitler or Lahavdil, Freud or Marx would have said that I can't trust myself, we wouldn't have all this terrible suffering that these people caused, right? They would have said, listen, maybe I should check it out. Maybe, maybe the answer to the world's problems is not, fascism, communism, the Oedipus complex. Maybe we should try to come closer to God. Maybe life is a dynamic thing. You have to try to increase good all the time instead of looking for bad. Maybe. That's number 1. You realize a person says, listen, I can't necessarily trust my urges. My urges are what we call the animal soul. That's my animal. That's number 1. Number 2, you start to realize the way I can, be a human being or be a Jew is to do twice as much good. Concentrate on only doing good. I can't concentrate on not doing bad all the time. You feel miserable. Eventually you become all depressed. I have to do more good. I have to help more people. I have to be more friendly. I have to be more honest. I have to be more positive. To help other people to be positive. So that's what it means, that his sins push him to do more. The sins transform to be good things, credits. Ubederich Prat, and especially Herschel, Mina Nefesh Abahamis, from the animal soul, which is like an ox, we get Rav Tavuot B'Korach Shur. You have a lot of produce from an ox. An ox can be very productive. You have a bad temper, you can channel that into being a person that makes big changes in the world. But Rav Tavuot B'Korach Shur, a chamor, you're like a donkey that's always cold. Yisachar chamor gorem. You can be cold. What does that mean, cold? Serve God in a cold way. Even things you don't understand, you're not excited about, you do it anyway, like a donkey does. Right? You do it, eventually the feelings will come. Kachamar l'masar, I'll do whatever I have to do. Seh Pazuri Yisrael, what about scattered sheep? Shelagabav, it says, Ta'iti kaseh oved, like it says the Jewish people are like a lost sheep. She'en lo tekifas, he has no, identity in himself. It will be, Bakesh avdecha mashcheni acharecha. Will be, God, you draw me after you. Draw me after you. I'll do whatever you say. Instead of doing what the United Nations says, I'll do what you say. Limashech l'kodesh baruch hu, to be drawn to God above tam v'das, above logic or reason. And from Salma, when it says Salma, it says that a person who's not honest, it says a beged means boged, that it's going to transform, that everything he does is going to be the ultimate honesty and truth. Kalalat pirusho shel davar, it means like this. Also the animal soul, in other words, your natural personality, will help you to serve God. Like the rabbis say, you should serve God with all of your heart, with both of your impulses, whether your good impulse or your negative impulse. Right? The Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hora also will come to serve God. That's the idea of Hashem's oneness. And what is the result of that happiness? From the godly soul alone, there's no happiness. There's pleasure. There's what happiness comes when your natural personality, because everybody's personality is different. When you realize that God didn't make a mistake when he created you with your natural personality. Instead of using it to be a thief, you become honest. Instead of using it to be mad, you become glad. Everything that you can use in your personality, you can use it to serve God better. And that's called serving God with both of your hearts. And from that comes a happiness. Uz v'chedva b'makomo. Power and happiness is in his place. It's all up to us to transform what God has given us into a holy temple.